Welcome back to another episode of Kotak Konversations, GCC Spotlight. I'm Aggarwal, your host today, and I'm super delighted to welcome my guest, Kamal Karanth. Kamal is a co-founder of Xpheno with decades and decades of experience behind him on talent acquisition, talent development, talent management, talent retention. Really my pleasure to have you today, Kamal. And today, as we deep dive into the world of GCCs, we will cover with him everything from the time an organization decides to set up a GCC in terms of choice of their country, choice of the city, choice of micro market, and the role that the talent partners play in that. We will talk about everything right from setting up a new GCC to talent acquisition, talent hiring, hiring of the leadership team, and how do you really scale up. Kamal, very warm welcome.
Anu, thanks for having me here and look forward to this conversation.
So Kamal, the most important asset that any GCC has is human talent. And when they decide to set up an office, at what stage do they reach out to talent partners like you? And what role do you play in those initial considerations?
Anu, in fact, at a what you call as a minus or a zero stage in headquarters, US, Europe, or Australia, wherever they are, even before they decide going to a country, I think talent starts there. So we may not be in that boardroom where they're deciding that, but that's already a given that talent is a starting point.
Right.
And thereon, when they come to India, they get to meet us, and that's when the stage sets for what we call as the skill, speed, scale, price. So all these things come into consideration. So, for example, if a company is coming to India and they want to hire 400 data science people, then we look at where are these skills available, right? Whether they match it. Then we look at what is the scale in which available, and we look at how long will it take to hire them, the speed part of it. And what would it cost to hire these 400 people? So that's what we call as the skill, speed, scale, and price. And based on this, you decide to go to a particular state. So we call it 4SP. The skill, speed, scale, and state, and the price. So 4SP. That's how the entire configuration comes into play. Then you'll decide whether you will go to a Hyderabad, you will go to a Bengaluru, or a Pune, which is where maximum greenfields have gone in the last 3 years. So that is the context in which this gets set of where will I get this talent and how fast can I hire them. So that is, in one way to look at where, at what stage we come into play.
Right. I like this. Skill, speed, state.
Skill, speed, scale, state, price.
Right.
4S.
4S and P.
Yeah.
I really like this 4SP part. But tell me, so where exactly do you come in?
So we're consultants. We like to put acronyms everywhere. So that's how the 4SP came in, right? But if you look at where we come in, we could come in New York when they are actually first thinking about, looking where to go. Or we could come in when they come to India. And when they come to India, they're not just coming to India. Many a times these companies are coming to India, looking at India, then going to Southeast Asia, looking at Southern American countries, then you're also looking at Eastern Europe. Right. So sometimes you're in competition with the other countries as well.
Right.
But 80% of the times I have seen India as one, specifically when it comes to scale of tech talent that we have in India. So then it's a given. So for us, when they come in, we do the consulting part, like I said, the 4SP part. If they like that and they say, hey, look, you gave this data to us, but can you execute? And that's when we come in. Otherwise, we do the consulting part and walk away.
Yeah.
Or if they say, look, we like you, can you execute that? Then we become their talent partners and recruit to whatever stage they want us to do initially. Absolutely. So that's where we come in.
So basically, what you're doing is actually helping them co-create the entire blueprint of when they come into India. And your insights on market, skills availability, compensation benchmarks are the most critical inputs for them. In a way of sorts, I would say that you're being their navigator.
Yes, in a way also you can say we're a little more grounded from the inputs point of view, because when they come to India, they would have got a lot of consulting inputs from consulting companies about the social, political, economics, kind of stuff which are real estate related stuff, which is already there particular to that city. But recruitment is a little more grounded than that. So our inputs would be more specific to, like I said, how well can you recruit them?
Yeah.
For example, in the context of India, especially for GCC who come with a tech talent point of view, they're not setting anything else but purely tech to start with, then it's also important to understand the talent aspiration pyramid. For example, if you look at the 7.6 million people, who are actually working in the GCC, I won't say GCC, in the tech world.
Right.
They are actually stacked in about what I call as 6 tech cohorts.
Okay.
So, if, for example, we have put it in the form of what we call as a talent aspiration pyramid. That means where you start from, where you have no choice but you start from, and where you eventually end up with.
Yeah.
For example, the maximum number of people who want to start, let's say if they don't have a choice, where will they start? So they will start with companies which are not tech companies, but have technology talent. It could be a hospital which has technology talent. It could be banks like yours, so which employ thousands of people. So that is a starting point. Today, close to almost 6 lakh people work in that space who are technology professionals working in non-tech companies. So from there, they move into possibly the largest tech cohort in India, which is IT services. Today, almost close to 25 lakh people plus work in that space. So there again, you have the big consulting companies, the MNCs like Accenture, IBM, CapG. Then you have the Indian IT majors like TCS, Infi, HCL kind of behemoths. Then you also have the mid-tier companies like your Persistence, Emphasis, Coforge kind of companies. So that's the largest space in which you find the tech talent in India, like I said, 25 lakh. So the next stage of aspiration is consulting companies. Consulting companies have a significant base in India, almost close to 3.5 lakh technology workers work in consulting companies.
Got it.
So the movement happens from, let's say, the non-tech companies to the IT services companies to the consulting companies.
Yes.
And then comes the GCC,
Yeah.
which is where close to almost 18 lakh people today work in technology space in GCCs. So that's how the aspiration pyramid is there. Above that is the product companies, previously what was known as FANG, and now let's say we want to call it MANG for a different acronym. So the Microsofts, the Googles, the Metas, the Apple, Amazons kind of companies.
Yes.
So that's where about close to 15 lakh people work.
Yeah.
So the GCC to product company movement is the next one. And top of the pyramid is the startup, where close to almost now 6 lakh technology workers work there. So the movement is like this, non-tech companies, services companies, consulting companies, GCCs, and startups.
Right.
However, as Indians, we all aspire to, go overseas.
Yeah.
Especially. And in that we think is the final, destination for people. Top of it, people move. For example, last year, close to almost 90,000 software engineers migrated out of India. Of course, 40,000 people came back. Previous year, 112,000 people went, and almost again about 40,000 people came back. So if you look at it, there is a friction of 50,000 to 70,000 software engineers moving out of India. So if you look at it, the context of how this friction plays out is important for GCCs to understand. And we tell them, look, this is how the movements can happen for you.
Yes.
And depending on what is their design for India, for example, if they're going to be a company which is going to start with service, there are 3 stages of any GCCs in India. One is they could start with a service company. That means their headquarters says do A, they will do A and, purely a service center. Then there could be what they call as output. So headquarters gives them the input, you convert them into an output, especially in some of the segments where customer interface is not allowed in the headquarters or in that local market that is there. So that's output. Then the third is what you can call as outcome, where in today's world, GCCs are talking about transformation, talking about innovations. That's the outcome part. So in the past, many GCCs came to India as an extension of their outsourcing partners, so they were doing service. Then came the stage of doing an output. Now, most of them are entering India with outcome itself. But you could be a large GCC who could be, doing all 3 together for different parts of your organization. So I know of a large bank, which is a multinational bank, employs about 40,000 people. So there is an arm which does only service, which is primarily taken from service providers. A bit of an output and a large part of outcome where they're, doing things like developing a product platform, doing a transformation to the global headquarters. So this design of who you are to your headquarters, service, output or outcome, will decide where you hire from as well. And that is the design we provide, what I call as a talent aspiration pyramid. That is an important element for them to understand and say, okay, I will start with service, but I will move to output, or I'll start with outcome itself.
That's right.
For example, there is a media company which launched its first live streaming sports app for US from India. So they just started with 125 guys and created that live sports streaming app, which went live in US. So it could be, they started with outcome, they didn't do anything else. So they use the outsourcing partners to do the service part of it. So you could be the, innovation or an outcome partner to start with for your headquarters.
Yeah. And you play a role in this entire talent aspiration pyramid, as you said.
We will actually tell them that, this is how it works. Right. This is how the talent is moving.
Yes.
And let's say if there is a competitive landscape, they want to know that their competitors are already in India. I say, look, these are the talent moved there. So it allows them to say, hey, look, I come here for service, but I think there's an opportunity for outcome. So they'll dial up headquarters and say, can I start here? And that is the role we'll play.
Understood. And each level of the pyramid will have different kind of people in terms of skill availability, different compensation benchmarks, and deciding also helping you decide which location you should go to, because which part of the pyramid you're going to play with is very important.
No, absolutely. If you're going to hire from service, if you're going to be a services company, so you're going to start with that. See, many of them start with insourcing, which they've already given it to a service provider. You want to insource. So you will also hire from other IT services companies in that context. But if you're starting somewhere fresh, you would actually hire from other GCCs because you feel they're more culture fit. They've worked with similar kind of projects before, so you'll hire them from other GCCs. But if you're going to be an outcome-based GCC, then you'll go to product companies and hire as well.
True.
So that is how this would play out.
And Kamal, now after this, the next step is leadership hiring. Leaders really set the tone of the place, the culture of the place. Leaders are the one who will be the ambassadors for further talent that comes into the organization. Then how do you go about attracting talent for this leadership pool?
Leadership is everything, right? So especially when it comes to GCCs, if you look at the trend, I'm just picking data points of, let's say, the 163 GCCs which came in the last 25 months in India. And in that, what we see as a trend is GCCs have typically hired leaders, especially site heads, from other GCCs. 40% of them just went and hired from other GCCs. An additional 24% did something which is logical, where they sent people from either their commercial business or their headquarters, because they wanted continuation of their culture or people who understand their organization processes. So when they are setting up, it becomes easier. So if you look at the context of how else, there are also companies which hired people from IT services companies because they were possibly insourcing from their vendor. So a small percentage of companies also hired from conglomerates, somebody hired from even consulting companies. However, I need to point out that when we talked about outcome, there were about 15% of GCC greenfields who hired from product companies, because from day one they wanted to transform. Not necessarily the people who only come from product companies do that, but that was the thought process. So if you look at leaders, where they come from matters. One, if they're coming from your own setup, the cultural continuity is there. Another GCC also means that they're bringing something which is already existing elsewhere, which is why they were hired for. So that is the context of when you look at leaders, where they hire from is an important element. And we've seen that panning out where GCCs, IT services companies, and mostly internal movements seems to be the place where they're hiring leaders from. And one more interesting piece that we observed in the greenfield GCC which came in the last 3 years is that they ended up hiring people who were one level below the site head. So that means they brought people who are feeling more aspirational to be the GCC head. So they felt they were giving them also career growth. Maybe compensation wise also it became more competitive to do that, right? So that is what we're seeing in the leadership hiring space. But when you go to the next stage of setting up the vision of the GCC here, what comes into place mostly it's a borrowed vision and mission for them. Though this is a tech center, though it could be a commercial company, an FMCG company setting up, they typically borrow the headquarters visions of what has to be done, which is the right thing to do from a continuation point of view. So clearly year one also is about not just borrowing what is there, but also trying to do a POC, the proof of concept, because they've come to India to prove something. And the year one for leadership is not just scaling up of the right talent, but also trying to set out some processes which are working out for the headquarters to prove that, look, your addition is right. I got it done in year one. So year one is about scaling plus execution of the POC as far as the leadership is concerned.
Absolutely. Kamal, so that was on leadership. But I've also seen that GCCs, once the leadership talent is hired, they scale up from 0 to 100, 100 to 1,000 within a scale of few months. So hiring that kind of numbers with that speed and the quality must be quite a complex task. Then how do talent partners like you partner in that journey?
So if you look at what we do, sometimes it appears very crazy because, again, going back to the Greenfield GCC which came to India in the last 3 years, out of the 163 came, 68 came to Hyderabad, 61 came to Bengaluru. So you can imagine, multiple GCCs hiring at the same time. There was a period last year where 3 pharma giants were hiring in Hyderabad simultaneously. and we're going after the same set of talent pool. So that can be very crazy because it could also heat up the talent market. It could increase the cost. We could have said that people are available at X price, but we didn't actually figure in the timing of multiple GCCs hiring the same talent pool. So that increases the cost base. It could. And two, because of a massive hiring like that, you could end up hiring more people from the same organization. Because we also know leaders are being followed by their team members. So, which is a danger to the headquarters because you could end up cloning the culture of another GCC that, if you're hiring 50 people from another GCC, you end up cloning that culture. So that's another challenge during the scaling up phase. But however, you have to remember that, Anu, that during this phase of hiring, year one especially, most of the GCCs do not hire more than 300 to 500 people in the Indian context. We believe that is not too big in the context of the 6 big cities that are there in India.
And the availability of talent pool in India.
Sure. So if you see like the 3 large cities where they came were, like I said, Hyderabad, Bengaluru and Pune. Mumbai, Chennai, NCR got the remaining fraction of it. These were the 3 large cities. So if you consider the talent friction in these places, what's important to notice that is in the scaling phase, I think last year we could see that there were 3 major companies which scaled above 1,000.
Okay.
Other than that, it was 300 to 500. So these 6 cities, which is Mumbai, Pune, Chennai, Hyderabad, Bengaluru, and NCR, they have enough talent. If you want to scale up 1,000 a year, no sweat in these 6 cities. So in that context, scaling up in India still is not a challenge as long as the skills are not very, very niche. So the new world of AI, if you want some specific skills in AI, we may not get them in all cities. Bengaluru and NCR possibly have a maximum concentration of the best skills. So in that way, scaling can be crazy. But at the same time, if you get your EVP right, your value proposition right, and then you hire the first 100 people in a methodical way, then you are able to establish the brand value proposition of your GCC in that local talent community.
Got it. Which brings me to my next question. What role is AI playing in your industry, or is it playing any role at all yet?
It is supposed to play. I wouldn't say there are large scale POCs yet, proof of concept on AI yet. So if you look at the overall recruitment process, it starts with what you can call as, let's say, talent mapping, sourcing, matching, calling, assessing, interviewing, negotiating, onboarding.
Yes.
In that, there is a combination of tech and combination of touch that is required for you to complete the process. The first 4 I mentioned is something where AI is beginning to play. But there are few data points available in the public domain which we are able to automate. But still, I think the sourcing, calling part is still getting at that phase. I'm not so sure so many of us are ready to be interviewed by AI yet.
Yes.
So many of us, if you are called by an automated voice, will be actually answer saying, even if you are interested at all or not, we may actually disconnect. So we're in that phase of POC where sourcing has really taken a bit of a speed thanks to AI sourcing, but still the entire process, these 8 steps that I mentioned, will take a while and also is a combination of tech and touch. So for now, the first 4 steps is where AI is making baby steps, but the last 4 steps definitely is about human intervention.
Kamal, I like this tech and touch. So what I wanted to next ask you is that, so when candidates are looking at roles in GCCs, they are not looking at only salaries, we know that, right? They're looking at growth, leadership, culture, future opportunities, long-term stability. So in that sense, employer branding is very critical when you go out and hire. And these new GCCs, forget branding, nobody even knows their names most of the time. Then what kind of role do you play in getting their brand amplified, brand established, and just attracting talent?
I'll answer your question in holistic way a little later, but I want to tell you this, that nobody changes a job without a higher salary. This myth of I'm joining for the role is very esoteric and romantic. Tell a guy who possibly is at an X salary and saying this is the best brand in the world, #1 company, but no salary increase. Nobody change the job. I think that's a nice packaging we are telling ourselves. It's a lie. I think we should get away saying that, look, money is a starting point for anybody to shift a job. Now, everything else is a package around it. So we say at Xpheno that people change jobs for what we call as the brand, role, industry, money manager. We call it BRIM.
BRIM. Say that again.
Brand.
Yeah.
You want the brand to,
Yes.
it has to be a multinational, it has to be such a kind of company. The role is exciting. I'm going to be the CHRO in this place, they're going to be making me as a lead engineer here. So I was, let's say, one level below, so a role excites me. Sometimes the role is also the mandate. What am I going to do here? Right? I'm going to turn around and build a product. That could also be the role.
Correct.
And sometimes the industry, some of them are bored with a certain segment.
Yes.
So when we are bringing pharma companies, we are telling them, people, look, what you make here actually contributes to, saving lives of somebody in this geography. So many lives are saved because this drug is made by this company. So industry matters sometime. But of course, money. The two M's, the first one is the money. Then the manager, we know people follow people. Even if they don't follow them, when they meet a leader, they say, look, I want to work for this person, right? So when they meet 3 people in that company, they almost think, okay, this company has good set of people. I want to work for them. So that's why the brand role, industry, money, manager, in that various phases of our life, we choose something based on where we are as well. Sometimes brand could be more important. Money is important all the time, but sometimes it's even more important. Some of the people say, if you don't give me 100%, I'm not moving because मेरे को इतना पैसा चाहिए at this point of time. So it is always a conversation. So you have to blend this into saying, what do you need? For this person, brand matters because he or she is coming from, let's say, this kind of a brand. So this is a bigger brand. So they'll come for that. However, like the question that you asked is that a lot of GCCs who are not known in India. They were doing something else in their home country, right? So there was a Fortune 50 company that came to India that I had not heard of, right? But when we looked at how do we position them, we took the B out of the place and say, in the rim, what can we do? Actually sell it to the job seeker. Can we sell the role? Actually, in that case, we were able to sell the industry more, saying that, look, this is a unique industry. Do you want to join them, right? So most of the GCCs, we take the B out and work, at least the 50% of GCC which came in the last 3 years, the B was out of question for many of them. If they're a consumer-facing brand and people know about them, even if they're not in India, it is easy to sell them. So that is one way of looking at it. So how do you blend it into your recruitment process also comes into play. For an insurance major, we hired 100 people. The processors that brand actually employed, or rather the company, because they're not a known brand in India, they don't have insurance business in India. But how they went about hiring people, the experiences they gave to hire this 100 people, obviously they touched base with almost 500, 600 people. And that went viral. For the next 300 people, we didn't have to call. We were getting calls in. So the first phase of hiring where, you establish your value proposition through how you treat the first 500 people decides, how you can hire the next.
On this whole BRIM piece, I also want to say it's really different strokes for different folks, like you said. For me, it is always the M, the manager. And, there's this famous saying that people don't leave jobs, people leave their bosses. And I think it just really holds so true.
I wish it was true. Like I said, I still believe, like my co-founder has the belief that I seen him changing 4 jobs. Every time he has, he's my childhood friend, so I know how he thinks. So he would come out and say, Kamal, I like the guys. I said, have you asked salary? He said, no. That is how we always change jobs. He came back and said, these are the best people. In my life, I have changed jobs based on various levels. Brand, there's role, sometimes money. I said, money is good. If these guys are not giving me 100%, I'm not changing. I've taken those calls as well, depending on where I was in my life. So I guess it's like you said, different strokes for different people. But in the context of life, each of this could matter.
That's right. So Kamal, whatever little I understand of HR, there are many different hiring models, and it's no one size fits all. So what are the different models that people usually deploy in this GCC space, and how do you go about deciding which one fits whom?
This is my favorite question.
Really?
So because it allows me to bring one more framework, we like frameworks. So we call it build, buy, and borrow of talent, the 3 Bs, right? So it's easy to understand the build. For ages together, the Indian IT services companies have hired freshers from college, lakhs of them, trained them in their own campuses, large campuses, then brought them on live projects, right? So that's how the Indian IT ecosystem has built, and they continue to build it. Even last year, about close to a lakh of engineering students were hired by these companies and put them on training, right? So that's the build model. The popular model for GCCs have been the buy model, because year one, when they come, they have to hire people who, like I said, have to do the POC, proof of concept, to the headquarters, that they came here for a reason and that project got delivered. So they would go hire laterals, as they call it, from the market. Your salary is X, you get 30% more, that's buying. Basically, you're augmenting the salary and buying the people. So that's the popular model for GCCs. And of course, some of them actually also have come to India where they already have a service provider. Because you have a service provider, you're insourcing or rebadging depending on what's your contract. And that stage, you're borrowing of talent. So these three also one way decide what you're also going to become in India. Like I said, if you're going to be a service center to your HQ,
Correct.
an output or an outcome will decide how much you will build or buy or borrow. But I think in the first 3 years, GCCs don't build. They only buy, and they have a borrow model in because they have a service provider who gives them some kind of a staff augmentation. So for borrow, they will come to companies like Xpheno. For buy, they will come to us most of the times. And buy and borrow are the two models which GCC lives by. Gives them also the borrow model gives them flexibility over a period of time. Buy is expensive. Build, they go after 3 years or so. They look at campuses and sort of start hiring them when they have proven to the headquarters that all the boxes are ticked.
Today I'm going back an expert on these HR models. I only knew of Johari window until now. No, but really. So Kamal, there are situations where GCCs are consolidating and downsizing talent. In these situations, how is the talent transition managed? What role do talent partners play in handling these difficult situations for some of these foreign companies in India?
So far, we've been fortunate in the sense that we've always had influx of new GCCs coming to India, the greenfield GCCs as I call them. So even if certain GCCs had a kind of a downturn in their headquarters, so they had to go through a bit of a churn or a pause, we always were able to absorb them with the greenfield GCCs coming into play. So like I said, 163 GCCs came, they absorbed close to 41,000 people, or rather they hired 41,000 people. So even if there were GCC which were going through this challenge because something happened, and last 2 years economically have been challenging for many of the companies. So even if they wanted to let go, some of them did let go people, they were absorbed by others, so we didn't hear much about them. However, from a role that we play, we always advise people to keep a bit of a flex in how they do the buy and the borrow. So if you have a good mix of borrow, you can always call your talent partner and say, can we redeploy these people elsewhere? Otherwise, you are also facing a backlash on your brand. At least in India, we still don't see, anywhere in the world for that matter, layoffs are not the most pleasant way to build a brand, right? And you will always face this. For example, last 1 year has been very difficult for auto companies thanks to the China impact on them, right? So some of the large companies have seen 30% dip in China sales, which is the first or second largest market depending on how large they are in that country. So this year has been very difficult for automotive companies, for example. So how much of that talent can be absorbed, because that's a niche segment. But luckily, it is about the friction that you have, and some of them are domain agnostic in tech, and they can move to other segments as well. So if you look at the downturn, sometimes it also works conversely. So if you're having a challenge in headquarters and you feel there is a cost pressure, maybe that's the time they want to have more IT spend in India. All said and done, we are very, very competitive when it comes to our talent competitiveness from a cost point of view. So we've seen in the BFSI segment in the past where it was a difficult times for the world, but more headcounts were getting added in India. So it cuts both ways, and I think GCCs have to make peace with it that they are part of this cycle.
Yeah, and the tech talent in India, or in most places, actually usually very sector agnostics. That usually helps.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And Kamal, with that, now I come to my last question, which is that a talent partner doesn't just help in hiring you, but he co-owns the outcome. So what does a good GCC talent partnership look like to you? Like, how should companies evaluate and how should they go about choosing the right talent partner?
I know you said it, partnership. So every GCC which comes to India or is already there needs to look at it like it's a two-way street, that they really mean partnership. I remember in the early 2000s, a large BFSI group came to India, and the company that I was working, in fact, set up 14,000 people we hired for them.
Wow, 14,000?
Yeah,
really?
in 4 cities.
In a matter of how much time?
5 years. 5 years in
Wow.
4 different cities. And you couldn't directly walk into the said, look, I want to work in your company. They would say, they would direct towards my employer and say, you apply from them.
Right.
So that was a true sense of partnership.
Right.
So everything we used to work with them. But over a period of time, you also have to realize that that partnership needs to be at executive level.
Yeah.
It has so many contours to it. In today's world, there's so much of leadership changes in the globe. So when people change, relationships change, right? And we have to remember that in recruitment, it's related to people. So there's so many outages all the time. It's an escalation business, you like it or not.
Yes.
So how do companies handle that? That comes into play. So in that, many partnerships get broken. But initially, first 2 years, it's important that GCCs who come to India have a long-term view of
Yes.
whom they want to work with and engage with them.
Yes.
That's one important aspect. However, you also have to remember that no single recruitment company can say that they're a specialist in all skills.
Yeah.
They would do at best 70%. There could be a part of it which possibly has to be done by somebody else. So though some of them, when they come to India, choose an exclusive RPO partner, eventually they realize that maybe they need to have a couple of more partners who
Yes.
bring in the niche skill hiring abilities. It's a mixture of both, but if they are choosing a recruiting partner, it is important for any GCs to look at who is delivering in the last mile. Because we all know when we meet making large pitches, the best guys, the CEOs, the VPs come and make the pitches, they don't deliver, right? So the talent pool availability, who's actually finding the talent partner? I think that's the best way to choose a recruiting partner, where you understand who's going to deliver to you. They need to be there that day when you're signing the deal, and also after you sign the deal during governance. That actually paves way for a better partnership in the long run.
This is exactly how our banking works too. It's finally the last relationship manager and how comfortable you are with him and how competent is he in delivering your goals that forms the partnership.
Nice. Same here, except that in our industry the churn is high, so it's you have to have a multi-pronged relationship, with an organization to ensure that the relationship is also continuous.
Absolutely. True. Well, Kamal, that brings us to the end of this conversation. Thank you so much for this incredibly insightful conversation. And I really thoroughly enjoyed it. And I think this is going to be one of our most important episodes in GCC Spotlight, given the importance of human talent in the life of a GCC. So big thank you to you.
Thank you, Anu, and thank you to Kotak Konversations for having me today. And I really enjoyed the conversation we had today.
Likewise. And thank you, viewers, for tuning into Kotak Konversations, GCC Spotlights. I hope you had as good a time as we did, and we see you soon.